Welcome to the 67th episode of the New Ventures podcast. I am your host, Sanjoy Sanyal, the founder of Regain Paradise, a boutique climate finance firm and a visiting fellow at the Cambridge Judge Business School. Along with my co-host, Professor Jaideep Prabhu, I host this series to understand climate change and food security.
Hi everyone. My name is Jaideep Prabhu. I'm a professor of marketing at the Cambridge Judge Business School. I'm very interested in innovation, particularly frugal innovation, how organizations can do more and better with less. And through that, I am very interested in food and issues to do with food security.
Our guest for today is Isaac Chavula, Country Director of Tiyeni, an NGO working with farmers in Malawi. We also have Kasonde Mulenga, the Program Manager of the Transforming Investments in African Rainfed Agriculture Project of the Stockholm International Water Institute. Welcome, Isaac. Welcome, Kasonde.
Thank you so much, Sanjay.
Isaac, I wonder if I can start by asking you to tell us a bit about your organization.
Well, thank you very much. I'm Isaac Chavula. I've been to University of Malawi for my Bachelor of Science and my Master's in Agriculture Extension and Rural Development. My organization is Tiyeni. It's a local agricultural NGO whose goal is to reduce food and income insecurity at a household level. I started working with the NGO in 2016, but this NGO started around 2005 and the Registrar General. And by then, from other Malawians, got the name Tiyeni, and then with the help of farming up with a technology which we call deep bed farming. It is this deep bed farming that got me very much interested because I have a past of conservation agriculture and working in the food security for more than 25 years, both in the NGOs and in government.
So, Isaac, where did you work in conservation and food agriculture before you came to Tiyeni?
Well, my background is agriculture because I'm a graduate to master's level from Bunda College of Agriculture. And from there, I worked with government, but in a different capacity. But in the food and agriculture sector, I worked with the NGO known as Concern Universal. I worked with this organization for a number of years, since 2002 to 2013. When I changed my job to another NGO, but I also joined the University of Lurio in Mozambique, where I lectured for 2 years. Now, I joined Tiyeni in 2016 from a background of food and agricultural projects, but also environmental management projects for those years with Concern Universal.
Wonderful. It'll be great to speak to you, Isaac. But before that, Kasonde, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Sanjoy. My name is Kasonde Mulenga. I'm a civil engineer by profession, having graduated from the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, South Africa, where I did my master's, specializing in integrated water resources management. I also have a degree, Bachelor's of Engineering, from the University of Zambia. Currently leading the team implementing the Transforming Investments in African Rainfed Agriculture, the project that CIWI is implementing in the Zambezi water course. I have over 20 years work experience in the water sector, having worked both in the private and public sector. I've worked with the Water Development Board under the Ministry of Water Development and Energy in Lusaka. I've also worked with the SADC Groundwater Management Institute in the provision of technical support to the 16 member countries in SADC. I've also worked with the Development Bank of Southern Africa under the Development Fund as a technical expert and a consultant in the water and sanitation space within South Africa that were tailored at fostering WASH as well as integrated water resources management in the municipal space within South Africa.
It's so interesting to hear your backgrounds. Isaac, I wonder if before we jump in, you can tell us a bit more about Malawi and the places and the people you work with.
Malawi is a landlocked country with a land mass of more than 94,000 square kilometers. But the population is 21 million now. But most of this population is under 17 years, meaning that it is a youthful country. Almost 20% live in the urban, which means more than 80% are in the rural areas. But it's a tourist attraction because we have so many features that are visiting and appreciating. And we have attraction centers like the Lake Malawi, which is visited by many tourists. We have the Mulanje Mountain, the Zomba Plateau, the Nika National Park, and the Kasungu National Park. But most strikingly, we have the Lake Malawi National Park. We have others like the Likoma Island and the Liwonde National Park. Malawi is an agriculture economy, which means that 33% of this GDP is contributed by the agriculture sector. And more than 80% of employment is coming from that sector. But also, we have major crops, cash crops like tobacco, tea, sugarcane. And these together they account for more than 80% of domestic exports. Yet we have very small land holding size, an average of 0.7 of a hectare. 60% of these smallholder farmers that cultivate less than 1 hectare.
Isaac, thank you for that background on Malawi. Can you tell us a bit more about some of the issues around food security? You mentioned farmers having very small holdings. Can you elaborate on that point?
Food security is really a challenge because a population of 4.4 million Malawians are facing acute food insecurity. That is 22% of the population. So malnutrition is also affecting 1.07 million children. That is representing 37% of under fives. So malnutrition or food insecurity is quite a challenge for Malawi.
Isaac, I understand that one reason of this food security, and this is the core of your work, the problem is that the topsoil has become infertile and impervious to water.
Yes, there is a big problem. In the past, you see, when farmers used to cultivate, they had plenty of land to cultivate and they could even shift from one place to another. But this time, the situation is that the population has grown and the farmers are supposed to work on the same piece of land year in, year out. So over the decades of cultivation, using the hand hoe and also working on the land, animal hooves and so forth, there is a compacted layer of soils that has developed over the decades. About 15 centimeters under the ground, there is that hardened soil that makes root development so difficult, and many crops do not have resilience against the stress in moisture content, such that the roots are not vertically getting deeper, but growing laterally. The second point on this hardened pan is it makes rainwater getting off the field as runoff. It fails to penetrate and infiltrate in the soils. So these two factors make Malawi so vulnerable to food insecurity because it doesn't harvest enough.
Kasonde, I wonder if I could ask you to jump in here and tell us how climate change is affecting this problem that Isaac just told us about.
Yes, climate change definitely is affecting the issue that Isaac has alluded to. It's a major threat to economic growth, long-term prosperity, as well as the livelihoods of already vulnerable population in and around Malawi. 90% of the population are dependent on rain-fed agriculture, 60% of whom food insecure on a yearly basis, as we heard from Isaac. So climate-sensitive rain-fed agriculture is a major contributor to the national gross domestic and foreign exchange earnings and supports livelihoods of over 80% of Malawans who are involved primarily and secondary in agriculture activities. So with the hard pan that has been described by Isaac, this has led to further food insecurity. So the climate extremes of weather events have severely eroded the resilience and adaptive capacity of individuals and communities via declining yields and food insecurity. There's a study that's been done by UNICEF where they indicate that food conditions, especially in the south of the country, has resulted in food insecurity with significant impacts on livelihoods of the people or poor people in the area, that is in the rural areas. So Malawi definitely is highly vulnerable to climate change under even the modest temperature increases. Over the coming decades, increases in climate variability and extreme events compounded by lack of human and technological capacity to mitigate and adapt to climate change will increase the vulnerability of chronically and transiently poor households heavily dependent on rain-fed agriculture in Malawi.
Isaac, is there something you want to add to what Kasonde has just told us about the impacts of climate change? What are you seeing on the ground?
For farmers who have adopted deep-bed farming, a practice that we are promoting, are able to harvest rainwater, and their crops are able to be resilient, become more resilient against water stress due to dry spells. So many farmers who are not able to practice deep-bed farming do have food insecurity because they do not produce enough. Whereas those who have migrated to deep-bed farming harvest more than quadruple their yields, because we have averages of, for instance, a farmer harvesting tons per hectare would now become harvesting more than 8 tons per hectare because of the deep-bed farming. So cases of farmers who are really chronically under food insecurity, that is a very, very big challenge in Malawi because of that climate change. And Malawi, as just said by Kasonde, was hit by the cyclone Freddy and other cyclones, which means a lot of fields or crop fields get washed away. And that creates a lot of vulnerability to most smallholder farmers in Malawi. And climate change is also not sparing the water sources because of flash floods which come and then go, leaving behind damaged ecosystems and dry rivers because of sand deposits. So it's quite a challenge for the nation to recover from these damages.
Very interesting, Isaac. I want to go back to Jaideep's question and ask you, has rainfall patterns in Malawi changed recently? Have you seen anything like that?
Yeah, there is quite a lot of change. Malawi as a country is longish. Rains start in the south and then they go up to the north. From November, we expect the southern region to receive rains, which planting rains. And then the northern region usually plants around December or early January if the rains come late. So in the past, we used to receive good rains. And I remember when I was still young, we could pass through this Christmas period when maize was knee high. And we used to do some piecework in the fields with the very most coming to mid, but farmers are planting now. While in the past, it was not the case like this. So yes, rainfall pattern has quite changed. Even the variability of rainfall is different. In the past, you could know when the rains come and when the rains tail off. But these days, you never predict. You can receive rains, and then when it tails off, so it has really changed.
Yes, I think we understand the impact of climate change that you're seeing. Isaac, you already started talking a little bit about the benefit of deep bed farming. Can you help us understand what it is?
Deep bed farming is a practice that Tiyeni is promoting, but it starts with decompaction of the soil. Remember, I said the soils are so much compacted over the past decades due to poor practices farmers practice. So we decompact that compacted soil, and then we construct macarages. Macarages are on contour. So these are constructed are bigger. And then along macarages, we plant vetiver, which holds together. Now we start aligning planting beds by creating furrows just below these macarages, which means the beds are also on contour. And these furrows create flat-topped beds and then the furrows and alternate like that. Now the furrows are boxed, which means they are ready now to receive any storm, and we have had no case of damaged beds because of rainfall that has surpassed the furrows. Otherwise, we prevent water coming from upland to make sure that the beds are not destroyed. So this is how we manage harvesting of rainwater, which is so precious. Once the rainwater has been harvested, it goes down in the furrows. And once it infiltrates the soils, it stays there in the soils for as long as the soils are receiving water. But in case of drought, it means the soils are still moist for the crops to survive on. So this technology has been approved by government, and also many NGOs are approving its impact, and then they are helping us to promote it.
And what is the impact of this, Isaac, on the yields? Are there differential impacts on women farmers versus men farmers? Can you tell us a little bit about the social and economic consequences of deep bed farming?
Yeah, deep bed farming has enabled many farmers who adopt it in a recommended way to more than quadruple their yields. I gave an example of 2 metric tons of yield. This is maize or any other crop, to more than 8 tons. And for those that do that, it means they have benefits, because in their households, they have enough food for their families, and they also have surplus to sell. Now, for the food that is adequate, it means in that household, all the children will be healthy and would not miss schools because they always have enough to eat. But for that household, will also have enough income to buy other basic needs. Even school fees and the other necessities are procured because they sell, and then they have income. It's not only that. When they are constructing the deep beds will reduce labor requirement in subsequent years. In first year, because of breaking that hard pan, it will require some input in terms of labor. But subsequent years, the deep bed doesn't require making of beds or furrows year in, year out. It doesn't. It can stay there as long as you nurture the soils with adequate manure. It will remain productive for some years. And that makes it that the women, especially the elderly and those maybe affected by some other illnesses, can still have food security, because deep bed doesn't require much labor in subsequent years. So in terms of other benefits, you see, those that are harvesting more would actually save their labor to engage in other activities that are not farming related. They may get into other farm generating activities, because some time is released from farming activities. So that also is a dimension that is quite helping many farmers who adopt deep bed farming.
So Isaac and Kasonde, what I've heard from you now is that agricultural practices which involve the use of the hand hoe has created this hard pan of impervious soil where the water does not trickle. And this is okay when people had a lot of land and they could shift from one plot of land to another. But obviously that's not the situation today. Today what has happened is that the fertility of the soil has fallen, and therefore the food production has fallen, which has led to this cross problem of food insecurity in Malawi, which Isaac talked about. And what you do is that when you say it's the technology, what I've understood you do is that people come in and they use and they work on the land, they break the hard pan, and then they plant the seeds in a layer below the soil. And then you create these ridges so that water does not run off. And today, Isaac mentioned that the rainfall patterns have changed. You cannot really predict when it is going to rain. So it is very important to conserve the water in the subsoil. And so even when there is a drought, the soil still remains moist. And over the years, people actually have to work less because furrows are created, so to speak, and they can do other things.
Let me begin by saying that in the past, farmers were taught how to make ridges. Now, the design for ridges was that they have to be along contour. But over the years, that aspect was lost, and ridges were associated to surface runoff and erosion. And even now, many farmers are doing that, and they are destroying their fields. So they have created that hard pan from two folds: compaction by their actions, but also by allowing topsoil to be eroded over years, now leaving behind a hardened and compacted soil. So that's when now we bring in deep bed farming to decompact and then create those beds I said are used for planting. Instead of having two ridges, we now have just a single bed, which is 100 centimeters at the top, top width. And then the furrows, which are also half meter width at the top, enough to harvest rainwater. These beds are now planted to crops. Different crops can be grown on these beds. But for maize system, means you have to have two lines spaced at 75 centimeters. And then from plant station to another is 25 centimeters because we plant one maize seed. This is what we have put in place to mitigate the extractive ridge cultivation.
Thank you for explaining that, Isaac, because I was really struggling to understand how it worked. But from what you described, apart from the initial cost of the labor, transforming something from traditional agricultural hardpan to this new deep bed farming, this transition technology does not cost anything, right?
Well, the transition to new technology has some rigidity from the social aspect of view because farmers must make decision. Of course, they demand that we train them. After training, they test it and they see the impact. But for a bigger population to adopt it, it takes time. There is a recorded, decision making amongst farmers. So the challenge is that we need to work with a large number of farmers to begin with, and then maybe in different sides so that as they share knowledge, we are aiming at building that population, a critical mass of farmers who are adopting deep bed farming so that it becomes part and parcel of their practices. And then the rest will now adopt the deep bed. Otherwise, it is expensive to work with just a few farmers because the impact does not spread as fast. But if we start with a bigger number of farmers, then that will facilitate spread of the technology.
And how many farmers have you been able to work with since 2015-16?
Yeah, so far we are working with more than 30,000 farmers. This is now across the country. Of course, some other projects have phased out, but we still have farmers practicing the deep bed farming. Now, counting from the northern region, central region, and southern region projects, that's the working figure we have, about 30,000. We hope that potentially we will reach to 40,000 following season. We are aiming at that because our strategy is to promote through what we call field days. Farmers and the government extension workers who work with us hold these field days and then invite other farmers from other areas or nearby villages to also see and approve for themselves that their colleagues are benefiting. And when they look at the potential yields, then they're also interested and then they call for trainings. And then after that, they also start now practicing. So our approach is hold field days, but also in the way we train them, we use the village approach where we mobilize the village people, those villages who have submitted requests for a training. We go and then mobilize the village to listen to our briefing. Thereafter, the farmers must work in their groups. And we use a method, a session methodology we call the decentralized demonstration garden, so that every member of that group will have to establish his or her own deep bed as a demonstration field. We also work, more than 65% of our farmers are female, because in Malawi, and I believe in the southern region of Africa, women take the lead in most food security interventions. So this makes us work with more than 65% women. And these women are selected also into decision-making positions in their groups. Some are, chairing the groups. Some are doing a secretarial duties and other tasks. That makes our female farmers become more powerful in the society because of this decision-making opportunity. They also demonstrate to others, which means in terms of talking to each other, presenting themselves, they are also, much better than those that are not participating in any group. So we are building the capacity of women as well. We also have youthful farmers because now some youths have resorted into farming because they do that as a business. So they are interested to engage in farming. And we have farmers who are young, maybe between 21 and 30 or 35. In that category, you see them, engaging in farming using the deep bed farming.
Kasonde, I wonder whether I could ask you to tell us where CV comes into the picture. What is the role of the Stockholm International Water Institute in this approach?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. So SIWI is implementing, as you know, the Transforming Investments in African Rain-Fed Agriculture project. This is an initiative that aims to unlock the potential for enhanced rain-fed agriculture in Africa. So the project has 5 different pillars, if I can just name them. The first one is capacity building. There's also knowledge generation. The third is attracting finance to the sector. The fourth is that of advocacy. And then finally, business case development. So what we are doing as a project, we are quantifying the costs and the benefits of inclusive, integrated approaches to enhanced rain-fed agriculture. They are acting as an advocacy project to demonstrate the value of investments into enhanced rain-fed agriculture. So this is what we are basically doing. We are looking at what we call the triple bottom line. The first one is the return on investment for the farmer. The second one is establishing the environmental benefits of enhanced rain-fed agriculture. And thirdly, improving the local value chain, looking at the economy, governance, as well as the management. So there's a lot that goes into there, looking at efficiency gains, improved resilience, increased agriculture impacts, improved family health at a local level, household level, and also increased income and employment for the local communities. Also, as I've indicated, one of the pillars is that of attracting investments. NGOs within the sector, the local farmers, there's a general gap in as far as financing is concerned. So as a project, we are working with the Zambezi Water Coast Commission, the Ministries of Water, Ministries of Agriculture, as well as the Ministries of Finance within the 8 riparian states, and Malawi being amongst those countries where Isaac is working on the deep bed farming. So for instance, in August, on the 8th and the 9th of 2023, the Zambezi Water Coast Commission, ZAMCOM, convened the Zambezi Rain-Fed Agriculture Investment Forum. So we were hosted by the Republic of Botswana, the Ministry of Land Management, Water and Sanitation Services. So the aim of the forum was to attract financing to Africa's rain-fed agriculture in order to build climate resilience by bringing together key players in the agriculture sector. And this includes policymakers, investors, financial institutions, and development partners. So the event features panel discussions, keynote speeches, networking sessions, providing participants with an opportunity to learn, share experiences, and forge partnerships. And I'm glad to say that Isaac, as well as his colleagues, were represented at the forum. So at the end of the forum, a very important undertaking was done. There was a statement of intent from the riparian states, because I did indicate that we invited representatives of government from the ministries of water, ministries of finance, as well as ministries of agriculture. So they undertook to say they understand that there are many unaddressed rain-fed agriculture financing opportunities within the Zambezi watercourse. They also committed to promote policies which support the attracting of multiple channels of financing to smallholder farmers for enhancing their agricultural practices and actively contribute to scaling up the rain-fed agriculture financing within the Zambezi watercourse.
Isaac, Kasunde talked about investment. How much do you need?
Yeah, we need partners to assist us with the training or building the capacity of both frontline staff with the government as well as farmers. We appreciate the opportunity through this TRCW arrangement where deep bed farming is given an opportunity to be showcased to other partners in riparian countries. We had the opportunity to make a presentation, and after that we had links to different partners who are interested in the technology. And as I'm speaking, we're continuing with these other relationships that we found. in that. And through the same, we also got interested, linked up with the Northern Regional Water Board to come up with a project which is focusing on the Runyangwa River catchment. The aim is to utilize the resources from the Northern Regional Water Board through a payment for ecosystem services model, which they have accepted. So we see it as the benefit that we're getting from this arrangement.
And Isaac, who are your funding partners? Can you tell us a bit about that?
We have in this arrangement, we're talking of the Northern Regional Water Board, but we also work with universities like Loughborough University, Kyoto University, and others. We are being supported in different projects with these institutions. Like I would mention the AFTRAC project, which is focusing on bringing the solar-powered tractors. One, to work on breaking the hard pan using solar energy to ease labor, which I mentioned that the deep farming is high in labor in the first year. Now with this AFTRAC tractors, it means that now instead of using a hand hoe or a pickaxe, farmers will be able to use solar power to till their fields using these tractors. Secondly, the tractor it is a source of power because it generates more than 75 kilowatts for the village and the other surrounding houses, supplied with solar energy in areas where it is off grid. So we see it as a transformational innovation we are introducing through the arrangement with the Loughborough University. With Tokyo University, which is also a partner that we're working with, their focus is on production of human fecal manure. We call that Elsen manure, which is made from fecal matter from humans, and urine, which is made into fertilizer. So we see that these innovations have quite significant impact on our farmers. Like reduction in labor, it means that most of the resources will now be, especially money that would have been used to hire labor, but now will be diverted to other interventions. Even manure, instead of buying organic fertilizers, which are so expensive here in Malawi as a landlocked country, we'll now be utilizing the locally available resources, which is just human manure. And with that, they more than double the yields of their crops. So it is quite beneficial. These partnerships are working for us. Locally, we also work with universities like Estonia University, the Mzuzu University, Luwana, which is Lilongwe University of Agriculture and Natural Resources. We are also working with CRAF in Malawi. We have, through this SIWI partnership, there is another partner in Malawi known as ICRAF. So we have formed partnerships locally. But most importantly, the Ministry of Agriculture and Natural Resources, which has got a very big network of extension workers in Malawi. So wherever our projects are, we work with government extension workers. And this is not difficult because our technology, the deep bed farming, was already approved and released as a technology in 2021 in December. So really, this is our network that we're working with as partners.
Kasonde, maybe I could ask you then, from your perspective, what is the message to potential partners and what do you need other than just financial support?
Obviously, I would like to relay the message that 80% of all agriculture activity in sub-Saharan Africa is undertaken by smallholder farmers. So that's quite a big demographic. But unfortunately, we have the lowest crop yields and agricultural productivity in the world. So we need to promote enhanced rain-fed agriculture right across the board. We are doing it within the Zambezi watercourse with the collaboration that we have with ZAMCOM and through ZAMCOM with the 8 riparian states, with local NGOs and so forth. But we need to do more. We have noted also that 95% of the food production in Africa relies on rain-fed. So only 5% relies on irrigated agriculture. So we need to do a lot in supporting rain-fed agriculture. Unfortunately, only 5% of the public investments go to rain-fed agriculture, whilst 95% is dedicated to irrigated agriculture. So we need the private sector to come on board. We need government to enable policies that are conducive for the private sector to play their part in collaborating with the local farmers to increase productivity. Are looking at a new way of entering into partnerships in order to accelerate and access climate investments. Looking at farmers and communities as the frontline water managers and as well as the environmental resources. Farmers do a lot. Their actions on the field lead to multiple benefits in improving water resources by reducing runoff, for instance, increasing groundwater infiltration, and reducing soil erosion. There are, of course, challenges, but opportunities abound. So we need to partner with the local communities in order to channel some of the investments that is available in order to have a transformative impact for long-term resilience. There are a number of financing tools that are available, but these need to be accessed. International climate financing, for instance, decentralized approaches to carbon markets, the development of payment for ecosystem services, which is still at an early stage of development. And also the knowledge sharing. I think it's quite important for institutions that have the know-how, to come on board to increase the level of capacity building to the local farmers. And as CIWI, we are doing our bit as part of a component of the TR project for the year 2024 and 2025. We'll be engaging a lot with capacity building for the local farmers and the NGOs.
And Isaac, what is your message to potential partners?
Partners must help with the capacity building of farmers, but more so, those extension workers with government and other NGOs must be trained in soil and water conservation practices, including the deep bed farming. Because if we don't build the capacity of farmers, who are the managers of our water and managers of our soils, then the livelihood of the entire community is at risk. What is important is to invest in rain-fed agriculture because, as Kasonde said, even in Malawi, I said most of the smallholder farmers are dependent on agriculture. I indicated 80% of our employers are related to agricultural activities, directly or indirectly. So we must build the capacity of the users and managers of our basic resources in production, that is rainwater and the soil that we have. Secondly, the realization that we must hold hands to achieve what is sustainable. We must work as partners. That's my message to the potential partners, because unless they open up to accommodate work of NGOs and partners in the agriculture sector, working in isolation or as individuals will not create any significant impact. So we need to collaborate and work as teams. Those two are my messages to potential partners.
Isaac, one thing that is troubling me almost is that you have reached 30 to 40,000 farmers. You mentioned that there are 4.4 million smallholder farmers. If it is a question of capacity building, let's say if somebody could sign a check today for you, I mean, one of those multimillionaires that we have in the world, and told you that in the next 4 years, you had to train all those 4 million people, how much money would you ask for?
Well, I think in terms of money, it's quite significant to mention. Maybe first of all, let me tell you the approach. In Malawi, we have nearly 3,000 field officers. These field officers are government employees. So my approach, given the money, would mean that I organize, that's a trainer of trainers for these extension workers so that they get trained, and as they go back to their districts, because each district has an agriculture office, then at district level, we organize training of lead farmers. So these lead farmers, behind each lead farmer, a lead farmer may train up between 15 to 25 smallholder farmers. We call them follower farmers. So that is the arrangement. And the trainings for extension workers who are already knowledgeable in agriculture, we have 2 to 3 days of training. And this is theoretical training, and then most of it is practical. because by the end of each training session, we must establish a deep field that is practicing all the agricultural practices that are commended. So the training of farmers may take up to 4 days because the understanding is actually different. So that's how we do it. Now, in terms of money, we recently calculated how much we may need to train. So it's about 450 million Malawi kwacha that is needed to train at least a good number of districts. We have 27 or 28 districts in Malawi, but the approach is to start with districts which have already expressed need because they have already requested us to train them. So we may start with that list first across the country so that these districts can now start rolling out the deep bed farming and associated good husbandry practices and establish a good number of farmers migrating from the ridge, which is destructive way of farming, to the deep bed, which is now looking at conserving the production resources, but also even the environment. So I would need that much to start with the prioritized districts.
This is very interesting and fascinating podcast, Isaac Kasonde. I'm going to ask you, do any of you, Kasonde, Isaac, have any questions for your hosts?
Yeah, thank you. Maybe let me go first. Not a question, but just a word of thanks for the opportunity to share some of the work that's being undertaken. As you know, the TR project is an advocacy project, so we'd like as much as possible to spread the word around that there is definite need to invest in rain-fed agriculture to tackle the food security challenges that we have amongst the African nation states. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share some of the work that we are doing.
I would also like to thank the organizers of this podcast.
If people want to get in touch with you, how should they?
They can get in touch with me, the program manager here at the Africa Regional Center, the ARC of Siwi. We are based in Pretoria at the Hatfield Gardens. Email kasonde.mulenga@siwi.org. And also through my contact +27 64 806 4111.
Isaac, your email?
Isaac Monjo as one word. ISAACMONJO Chavula is spelled CHAVULA at Tiyeni.org. That's the official one. The personal one is Isaac Chavula Monjo as one word and all in small letters at yahoo.com.
Lovely. And with that, thank you very much, Isaac Kasonde.
Thank you so much, Isaac and Kasonde. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Thank you so much. Very much appreciated. Thank you.
If you like this podcast, do visit us on regainparadise.org, regainparadise.com. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and you can also subscribe to these podcasts on Anchor, Spotify, Google, Apple, and YouTube.